Once you know about the Germanische Heilkunde or Germanic New Medicine, it can feel almost unbearable not to intervene when someone you care about is suffering. You see the pattern, you hear the conflict theme, you think, oh my goodness, I know what this is. And then you want to fix it. But the conflict is not in your psyche, it's in theirs. And if you try to resolve it for them, you do not actually save them. You devalue them and you exhaust yourself. And you might feed the very drama that's keeping the conflict alive. So today we're talking about what real help actually looks like, because you cannot resolve someone else's conflict, but you can do something much better. Nature makes no mistakes, and your symptoms are no exception. Welcome to Mind Over Symptom, where we uncover the deeper pattern. Trying to resolve someone else's conflict, it's like trying to digest their lunch for them. You can explain chewing, you can recommend enzymes, you can hover around the table with a clipboard, but you can't climb into their digestive tract and do the work. Biological conflicts and special biological conflicts are like that too. They happen in the individual's psyche. You can't climb in there and you can't think their unconscious thoughts for them or believe their beliefs for them. Certainly you can help someone, but you can't resolve conflicts and expand their awareness for them. And when you try, you don't become their healer, you become an added complexity. When we learn the 5 biological laws, we believe that the information or knowledge itself is curative. In the first few years after I discovered the GNM, I spent hours explaining the 5 biological laws and conflicts and germ layers and different phases of a special biological program. But this didn't help people. It actually kind of freaked them out, because I was devaluing them when I did this. I like the way the press secretary a few years ago said, I can only explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. When we try to fix someone else's conflict from the outside, we're explaining, and we're thinking that explanation is the same as understanding it for them. So we think that telling people something is the same as changing the contents of their psyche, like digesting their food for them. But just like your digestive tract isn't a fridge that you throw your groceries into, your psyche's not a folder that you throw information into. And that's why trying to solve someone else's conflict, especially by explaining, isn't usually solving anything. It's devaluing, it's rescuing, and it's actually making the whole thing worse. This is one of the biggest frustrations of the Germanische Heilkunde. It's this fabulous body of knowledge, but you can't wave knowledge at someone and call that therapy. You can't call it coaching or parenting or friendship or marriage or pet ownership or dealing with crazy neighbors. It's just waving information at somebody. That's all it is. And the issue here is you can't resolve someone else's conflict, no matter how much you love them. Not because you're not smart enough, not because you haven't found the right supplement, not because you forgot to phrase the question in exactly the right enlightened way. You can't resolve someone else's conflict because the conflict's not occurring in your psyche. And this matters so much. Because when we talk about the 5 biological laws of the Germanic New Medicine, we're not talking about generic stress. We're not talking about a vague mind-body connection. We're talking about special biological programs that the individual originates in his or her psyche. And every special biological program begins in the psyche of the individual who's running it, not in the practitioner, not in the friend who's read 3 books and suddenly sees everyone else's DHS. The individual begins the program by forming a biological conflict, and then the individual suffers the biological conflict, and the individual resolves the biological conflict. And the individual makes the changes in his or her psyche, brain, and body to complete the special biological program and evolve. If therapy doesn't mean fixing someone, because you can't, because you're not in their psyche, brain, and body, no matter how perceptive or insightful you are, what does therapy mean? I'm not talking about whether the answer is homeopathy, colloidal silver, herbs, coffee enemas, salt baths, nervous system regulation, talk therapy, energy work, fancy gizmos that pull a biological conflict out of your crown chakra. That's one of my favorites. When I talk about therapy, I am not talking about a specific modality. My working definition is really simple. Therapy means offering energy. Not injecting it, not replacing someone else's life force, not becoming their emotional dialysis machine. Giving energy means creating conditions where the person can access their own energy more cleanly, or offering that. But giving energy is not inserting yourself into their process. It's making it easier for them to do their process. A therapy is effective if it helps the individual to have more of their own energy available to them to use to solve their conflict and resolve and complete their program. There's really just two ways that a therapy is effective, and they both have to do with letting the individual have more energy. If someone is conflict active, an effective therapy helps them waste less energy. So it helps them to burn up less energy trying to keep themselves together while they're trying to solve an active conflict. If someone's in a healing phase, an effective therapy helps them not create new conflicts about the healing itself. So the energy that you can help somebody corral for themselves in the healing phase is usually in the form of temporary support so that the individual can go all in on their healing instead of spinning off, right? This kind of support in a healing phase, it's really missing in our modern, not just our modern medical system, but all of our modern society, especially Western culture. Without understanding what their biology is doing, people get into a healing phase of a special biological program and they start scattering their own energy by spinning off into new biological conflicts because they panic about their symptoms. So we want to help people by giving them enough energy that they don't have to worry about all that stuff, so the panic is less. But you see how we're just letting them use more of their own energy instead of wasting their energy. And at least 80% of health symptoms, physical health symptoms, are healing phase symptoms. But most people have no idea of that. Domesticated people and animals really panic and freak out about healing phase symptoms. They start with, oh my God, I think I'm sick. I can't afford to be sick right now. What if this gets worse? What if this means something terrible? What if I can't work? Who's going to look after my kids? A good therapy helps prevent that kind of secondary panic by helping the individual not have to worry about those things. But the important thing, no matter if it's conventional medicine, alternative healthcare, Germanische Heilkunde, is that every good therapy is always about helping someone not waste their energy to the point that they drain their metaphorical battery. We can only help people this way if we remember it's always their energy. Just like the biological conflict is theirs, just like the healing is theirs, the whole thing belongs to that individual. Therapy in Germanic New Medicine means understanding where the individual's at and either helping them not waste energy in an active conflict phase so they can get down to the business of resolving their conflict, or helping them not spin off into new conflicts in a healing phase so they can get on with the business of completing their evolution. So, a good therapy helps the person conserve focus and reclaim energy. Enough said. A bad therapy turns you into the energy supply. This is why we have to be careful not to throw GNM charts and embryology textbooks at sick people. You see, trying to solve other people's conflict, aside from being really condescending, can actually be harmful to people. Rescuer mode can become dangerous. Of course, we want to help others because of our empathy. We feel their pain, so we want to help alleviate that. And because we feel something, we think we need to do something. This happens all the time when people start learning Germanic New Medicine, or actually any kind of therapy. I used to do this all the time. Long before I learned Germanic New Medicine, I'd learn some new piece of information. I'd recognize a pattern, and immediately I'd think, oh my goodness, my cousin has hypoglycemia. Oh, I finally understand my friend, I see what can help her with her migraines. This explains my husband and his weird behaviors and why he treats me the way he treats me. This explains my child. This explains my dog. So you call them up, you take them aside, you reach out to them, and you start explaining. You tell them about their blood sugar or their subluxations or their hormones. And then if we know even a little bit of GNM, it gets even worse because now we have a framework and a bunch of new terminology and concepts. So we got a lot we got to get across to this person. And also now we're not just emotionally invested, we're theoretically dangerous. We start thinking, oh, I know what this is. This is abandonment. This is territory. This is self-devaluation. This is kidney collecting tubules. This is definitely because of that thing their mother said back in 2017. Now we're diagnosing. we're still not in that person's psyche. We are still looking at them from the outside. And maybe we're right. Maybe that is what's going on with the person. But being right doesn't mean that we can resolve it. That's the hard part. You can identify the likely conflict theme. You can see the pattern. You can understand the tracks. You can know exactly why this person keeps recreating the same situation. You can see it clear as day. And still, you just can't resolve that conflict for them because the conflict's not stored in your opinion. It's not stored in your notes. The conflict isn't stored in your very accurate explanation. The conflict's active in their psyche, and you just can't go there. You can't climb into someone else's psyche with a flashlight, a clipboard, and a German accent and say, "Good news, I found the DHS." Everybody relax. But in our modern conventional indoctrination, we've learned that we can totally do this. Yay! So what happens is we become increasingly invested in whether they take our advice. And despite our best efforts, their conflict persists. And then both people become frustrated and exhausted. They're not fixing it. You're not succeeding. They didn't take your advice. You're having an identity crisis that nobody cares what you have to say. And now the whole thing has become a mess. The reason this happens is very simple. Their conflict is in their psyche, and you can't enter into somebody else's psyche. As much as people love to talk about psyops and mind control and the bad guys doing this to us, direct intervention in another person's psyche is not a technology that exists. Yeah, people can lie, people can abuse and manipulate, people can create confusing circumstances, but no one can climb inside your psyche and resolve your conflict for you. And you can't climb inside someone else's psyche and resolve theirs. Now, the sneaky thing about this is that when someone else has a problem and we feel bad about it, we mistake our own discomfort for compassion. Someone you love's cowering in the corner during a thunderstorm and you feel bad. They're having their experience. But now you're having your experience about their experience. And then while trying to solve their conflict, you're actually trying to solve something in yourself. You're trying to get relief from your own discomfort. That's the tricky part. Empathy is wonderful. And empathy is also a pain in the ass because we feel with someone, we imagine we feel with someone, and then we start projecting ourselves into what we imagine their psyche must be. When we're trying to make ourselves feel better about someone else's problem, it's self-devaluation wearing a tiny nurse hat. Now, their conflict has become my self-worth problem. That's the rescuer trap, the enabler of the whole pathological pattern. It's when we're in that trap that we stop helping and we start making someone else's problem worse. Trying to relieve our own discomfort by projecting ourselves into what we imagine their psyche must be is an identity conflict, in addition to the self-devaluation that we're doing. But that identity conflict and self-devaluation are not in their psyche. They're in our own. It's a little movie we're playing in our own head, and then we start trying to solve the movie, which is about as effective as yelling at a character on your TV screen or waving a GNM chart at it. And if we keep trying to fix what we can't access, we lose energy fast. Now we've got two sick people. Rescuing at the right moments is life-saving. Fishing a drowning animal out of a river, that's life-saving. Finding a lost child in the woods is life-saving. Getting someone's heart beating after an accident, that's life-saving. But when we try to resolve someone else's conflict, what we're trying to do is become an energy replacement for them. And that can look helpful for a while. They feel better after talking to us. They calm down when we intervene. Well, then they lean on us. Then they ask us what it means. Then they wait for our interpretation. And then they start needing our attention so that they can stabilize. And we think, look, I'm helping. But are we? Or have we become the external substitute for the energy they need to find in themselves? Rescue in that sense works kind of like heroin replacing natural endorphins. If the body stops needing to produce or access something naturally because an artificial replacement keeps arriving, that's how substance dependency forms. It's the same when we're up in someone's business trying to solve their conflicts for them by being their replacement energy supply. Instead of the person finding their own energy and their own resolution in their own contact with their own life, they're getting a little dose of you, your attention, your pity, your urgency, your explaining, your emotional labor, your frantic rescue ambulance with the siren going, right? And they might feel temporarily better. But the real energy supply hasn't been restored. Worse, the person might now have two problems: their original conflict, of course, and a dependency on their rescuer. If they solve the conflict, can they still depend on you to rescue them? Does that energy supply get cut off? That's two problems they've got to worry about now. So I'm describing almost the entire health industry right here. Everything except acute care and rehabilitation does this. And it's not therapy. It's the creation of a customer. This is one of my biggest criticisms of the health industry. It might create relief or compliance or a very loyal customer, of course, but it doesn't create the one thing that we always need in order to get better. It doesn't create evolution. You can stay dependent your whole life, but you'll never heal that way. And if you never heal, you never evolve. You never get the hang of actually solving the problem. That's what our efforts to solve someone else's conflict can become for them. A painkiller, a distraction, a dependency, a false source of energy and approval and a false sense of goals, all of it. It's a proxy, This is why pity is really scorn, because pity looks loving on the surface, but underneath, pity is saying, you poor thing, you can't handle this, you can't do this, you're not capable. That's not love. That's devaluation. Trying to resolve other people's conflicts is also exhausting for the helper because it's impossible. And impossible tasks are self-devaluation machines. If I decide my job is to do something I literally can't do, I'm going to end up feeling like a failure, not because I failed, but because the premise was absurd. It's like deciding, today I'm going to teach my toaster to speak Portuguese. And then 4 hours later, I'm sobbing into the breadcrumbs because apparently I'm not a good enough toaster mentor or something. No, the problem isn't my effort. The problem's the task that I'm trying to do. It's an impossible task because you can't resolve someone else's conflict. So if your sense of worth is dependent on resolving someone else's conflict, you're going to bleed your own energy. It's especially brutal with people we love. I've got a child with special needs, and that can easily become an endless rescue machine if I let it. There's always a need, always a guilt string available to be pulled. Frankly, my dog is just as bad. I'm convinced my son and my dog have had secret meetings and exchanged notes and, workshopped, practiced facial expressions. They know exactly how to push that button I've got that makes me think, well, if I don't fix this, the whole world's going to collapse. But the instant I start treating them like poor, helpless victims, I drain myself. I start feeling guilty for not giving enough, then guilty for not giving that same level of attention to everything else. Now I'm guilty because I'm failing my son, my dog, my work, my house, my garden, my emails, my future, possibly the entire planet. That's not love. That's a black hole of self-devaluation because I've taken on an impossible job. My energy supply is going to go straight down the toilet and I'm going to be the one needing therapy. Okay, so how the heck do we actually help someone who's suffering? The first step in helping someone else is not to dive into the fray, not to jump into the conflict and start swinging. Don't become part of the program. Don't become the emergency generator for their emergency system. Just, we've got to pause, as the midwives would say, we've got to sit on our hands. Remember the basic principle. Every special biological program begins in the individual's psyche, and the individual begins it for a purpose. That purpose is evolution. It's not comfort. The purpose of the biological conflict is not comfort, convenience, looking good on Instagram. It's evolution. And evolution requires a challenge. There's a physics to this. What actually needs to happen for someone's conflict to be solved and for them to complete their healing phase and evolve is the old self has to reach a limit. The old strategy has to stop working. The old identity has to crack. Something has to become impossible or difficult or painful enough that a new solution can be considered. There was a New Age teacher, maybe Michael Beckwith. I don't remember who said this, but he said, the pain pushes until the vision pulls. So we need that pain. The pain has to get bad enough that we're willing to do the hard work of evolving. You see, biology works on the principle, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So biology won't fix anything that ain't broke enough. And this is why trying to fix somebody else's conflict for them is bad. It's rescuing by not letting them face the thing that needs to be faced and dealt with. So rescuing is devaluing to both you and the person whose biological conflict. You're not allowing them to suffer. If you keep cushioning the person from every consequence, feeling, every moment of contact with the actual conflict, you prevent the very breakdown that would allow the new solution and the evolution. Rescue, that is trying to solve other people's conflicts for them, it can be incredibly harmful because it interrupts the revolution. It keeps the person from meeting the edge where change becomes possible. Now, real help isn't abandoning someone. It's not pretending you're spiritually advanced because you ignored a toddler near a busy road. Real help means helping someone to create conditions for the person to do their own work. Therapy's always about giving energy or offering energy, but it's in a way that helps them not waste their energy. It's not in a way that replaces. Sometimes it means organizing their environment better for them. Sometimes it means reducing unnecessary obligations for them, at least temporarily. Sometimes it means asking one question instead of giving a 40-minute lecture. Sometimes it means listening without feeding the drama. Sometimes it means saying, I love you, and I am not going to participate in this pattern. Sometimes it means closing the door, putting water in the room, and letting the dog be afraid of the thunder. That last one is a true story. My dog's afraid of thunderstorms, and I tried everything, let me tell you. Cannabis, wrapping her head, wrapping her whole body, rubbing her back, distracting her with treats, distracting her by yelling at her, which I don't recommend, but let's not pretend we're all saints here. Anyway, none of it resolved the conflict. Do you know what helped? I brought her in the room with me, secured the environment, gave her water, closed the door, and then I ignored her. Not in an abandoning way, in a boundaried way. She knew I was there. She knew I would intervene if there was a real emergency. But I wasn't feeding the drama anymore. That was her business. I was no longer becoming the energy source for her panic. I wasn't treating her like a useless blob with fur. I gave her safety and I let her have her own experience and, sorry, girl, have a good time. And you know what? That helped more than anything else because her energy wasn't going anymore into the dramatics of trying to get my attention by ripping up the couch or the wall or pooping on my favorite rug, which is a great way to get my attention, by the way. Anyway, her attention became available for solving her conflict. So much so that last year, at 12 years old, she actually solved it. One day, it was starting to storm, and I was busy ignoring her while keeping her safe, and things got so calm. And then the opportunity came for her to get off leash. I accidentally left the sliding door open while I rushed to bring in some laundry from the clothesline that was about to get rained on. And away she went. Vroom! Her conflict was solved. A moment later, what happened is she realized she could enjoy the delight of me chasing her around the neighborhood trying to catch her in a thunderstorm. It was her favorite thing mixed with her least favorite thing. And wow, it turns out they could work together. And, she stayed out in the rain. And she's done that several times since. It's raining out there and she just sits out there with this look of amazement on her face getting rained on. It's the weirdest thing. I've always loved storms. And that day we both evolved because we both enjoyed the storm together. And I no longer had to feel sad for her anymore when the clouds rolled in, right? I think what's underneath this burning desire to go solve others' conflicts for them is that we watch people struggle, and it's obvious that if we don't help, nobody will, right? That feels like a noble idea somehow. But the hidden assumption is that the individual we're wanting to fix is fundamentally incapable of solving their own stuff. That they can't access life, that they can't access love, they can't access their own resources, they can't resolve, they can't evolve. And that's not respect or compassion to believe that or to treat somebody as if that's true to them. That's pity. And pity is scorn in a casserole dish. It might look warm, but the underlying message is devaluing. You didn't learn to walk because somebody moved your legs for you. You didn't learn to talk because somebody shaped your mouth and pumped air over your larynx. You didn't learn to drive because someone shoved their foot on top of yours and grabbed the wheel. Actually, that last one's a real example from my life, and I can confirm it doesn't teach driving. It teaches real annoyance. Real help respects the other's individual capacity. It says, you have life in you. You have energy in you. You had what it took to create this special biological program, which means you also have what it takes to resolve it, complete it, and evolve from it. I will support you in that, but I will not replace you. This has been Mind Over Symptom with Lishwi Springford, where symptoms are not the enemy and you are your own authority. For more, visit mindtreehealth.co.